Hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg. I am here to do a reading wrap-up for the month of January and look ahead a little bit to the month of February and what I will be trying to read in the month of February as well. January really kicked 2022 off to a good start in terms of reading. A lot of other things were kind of a mess, but the reading has been great. I read 8 books in the month of January, and I'm halfway through another one, which is going to carry over into February. And only one book is something I would describe as a dud. Everything else has been really good. So because it's been such a good reading month, I wanted to give each of these books a bit of a spotlight in wrapping them up and cover them one more time before we move into February, which is looking like it's going to be another good reading month. I have pretty high hopes for what I've got lined up for February. And we'll talk about that at the end of the video. Let's start with a little note on January. It was a bit of a tough month because, there were tough things going on in general, but the toughest thing was that Joel and I both got COVID, as I mentioned in a previous Friday Reads video. And that was a tough recovery. We were both feeling pretty sick for a while due to that. But I did manage to read a fair amount of print books while that was going on. I kept my pace going, which was, I'm impressed with myself, basically. And I'm pleased that I was able to keep that going. January has also been interesting because traditionally, lately, I have been reading more audiobooks than physical books. But in the month of January, I only did 2 audiobooks and everything else was by print. So that's two audiobooks, 6 print books. And that is staggering given my recent track record in months and recent years. So I'm hoping that I can keep this momentum going. The downside is that I'm still working my way through the love songs of W.E.B. DuBois, which will also carry into February. But I'm really pleased with the amount of progress that I have made on physical books. Some of the books actually were not physical books. They were ebooks through NetGalley, but you know what I mean. So let's start running down the ones that I finished. So 2 of the books carried over from 2021. The first one that carried over was Holding by Graham Norton. This was something that I listened to on audio, and I really enjoyed it. It was a sort of cozy mystery, but had a lot of dramatic elements that would keep it from being what people would typically classify as a cozy mystery. Graham Norton is a very funny person, and I knew that going into the book. He also turns out to be a great writer and plotter. The characters are pretty indelible, and what's interesting as well is that he wants you to get to know the characters more than he really wants you to worry about the mystery. The mystery is important, but it's much more almost like a character study of people in a small town in Ireland. And I just really enjoyed it. I would be happy to read his other books, both of which I believe are also available on Scribd, so I will be looking for them at some point. I've gotten away from doing mysteries, but I think his writing is a type of mystery that I would be happy to do again. And like I said, it kind of feels cozy, but it's not silly or fluffy in the way that a lot of cozy books typically are. It actually does really want you to have complex characters and motivations, and it's not really afraid to be dark, which is a good thing, I think. The premise, if you are unfamiliar, is that in this small town, a body is found on a property, and people believe that it is a man who disappeared a while back. And as the sort of bumbling detective investigates, he gets tangled with some of the locals and secrets start to come out, and then maybe another body is uncovered, and it goes from there. If you are at all into mysteries, I'd recommend it. If you are into just kind of funny, light reading or looking for something like that, I'd recommend it as well. It really did the trick for me, carrying over from 2021 into 2022. The other book that carried over from 2021 was Go Tell It on the Mountain by James Baldwin. This was actually the first book that I finished in 2022. I finished it on New Year's Day. I had been reading it because for last year's reading challenge from Montana Book Company, I needed to read a book that was published the year a parent was born. And Go Tell It on the Mountain was published the year my mother was born, which which made it a perfect fit because I've been wanting to read more James Baldwin anyway. Now I have read Go Tell It on the Mountain, Giovanni's Room, and If Beale Street Could Talk, and I've loved all of them. I need to keep going with his works and dive a little bit deeper. I really enjoyed Go Tell It on a Mountain because I had heard that it was a semi-autobiographical novel. I expected it to be much more about the James Baldwin stand-in character, and it is, but it shifts perspectives throughout the book, so you get into the heads of other people who would have been in his life in his childhood. And that is extremely interesting. I will say, I don't think it's as strong as Giovanni's Room or If Beale Street Could Talk. It was James Baldwin's first book, and it is the book that he says he needed to write in order to write anything else. And you can really see the ways in which he is sort of exercising demons of his past through this book. But what's really interesting about it, and maybe this is the part that helped him exercise those demons, is that, like I said, he's kind of crawling into the head of the mother character, the father character, who is abusive, stepfather really, and the stepfather's sister, and characters like that. And it makes it a little difficult to know the character who is a stand-in for James Baldwin, but I also think that's kind of the point. And that makes it really interesting. So this was another successful read that carried over from 2021, but made 2022 a really solid reading year so far. I'm very happy that I got this in, and I need to explore more of James Baldwin's works. I don't know where I would go next. I feel like The Fire Next Time is a sort of natural fit. So if you have recommendations for what to do next, please let me know in the comment section down below, because I want to do more James Baldwin. I believe I have a copy of The Fire Next Time. So the ones that I've read, again, are Go Tell It on the Mountain, Giovanni's Room, and If Beale Street Could Talk. So if you have thoughts about which one I should do next, please let me know in the comment section down below, because I would love to do more James Baldwin books in the future. He is definitely a favorite writer of mine. And then we go to the first full reading experiences that were for 2022. And the first one is Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan, which is a very short book. It's but novella size. I don't remember the exact page count. I got it from the library, and I really loved it. It's a small book. It seems a little bit slight in that sort of Zori way by Larissa, if you remember me talking about that book. It seems like a series of sort of small events, and it really adds up to a big emotional punch by the end. I loved it. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful book. And I talked about this when I read it. I had been hesitant about purchasing it, so I was glad that my library had a copy, because if a book is that short, like barely over 100 pages, I tend to wonder if it's worth spending $20 on. It's worth it. So if you are in a similar situation and wondering yourself if it's something that you would like to read and your library doesn't have a copy, I'd say it's worth your money for sure. I have been thinking about getting a copy for myself, actually, because I enjoyed it. And I definitely want to seek out more writing by Claire Keegan, because it's just great. So set right before Christmas and into Christmas Eve, possibly Christmas Day, I can't remember. It follows a man in another small Irish town who it's set in the 1980s, and he is very busy because it's winter and everybody needs coal. And he is traveling around struggling because a lot of people are having financial difficulties. But one day he makes a delivery to the local convent, and something he discovers there makes him question his own moral fiber and the moral fiber of the people around him. And it's really about how difficult it can be to do the right thing when the people who are in power and the people who are in the thrall of the people who are in power don't want you to do anything. And just small acts of kindness can be very revolutionary. I really loved it. I would definitely recommend it if you are interested in it. The other audio that I listened to in the month of January is the next book that I finished, and that's How to Resist Amazon and Why: The Fight for Local Economies, Data Privacy, Fair Labor, Independent Bookstores, and a People-Powered Future by Danny Kane. Danny Kane is one of the co-owners. He's the majority owner of the Raven bookstore in Lawrence, Kansas, which I would really like to go to someday. If I'm ever back in Kansas to visit Joel's family, I would love to make a pilgrimage to his store. It's beautiful. Follow them on Instagram. Check them out. Their store is gorgeous. They just moved to a new location last year. They used to have 2 bookstore cats. One of them was retired and now lives with one of the booksellers, and the other one is still in the store. Anyway, Danny Kane, as the majority owner, he was the owner, and just this year, they announced that some of the booksellers were buying into the store. So he has been an opponent of Amazon for a couple of years now, and he had put together pamphlets that he would publish and sell to people about why Amazon was such a threat, and then he compiled a lot of that information into this tiny little volume. I believe the audio is barely 4 hours, if at all that. It's definitely worth your time, because I think the danger of a book like this is that it will fall into the hands of people who are already primed to agree with everything Danny Kane says, and that is me, for sure. So I feel like it's important for people like me who read this and agree with it and think that its message is important to try to get it out to other people so they will find it, discover why it's important to resist Amazon, and maybe try not to shop there. And maybe they'll spread the word in turn, because I already don't shop at Amazon. So, I did find out from this book that a used book reseller that I had been using is owned by Amazon, and that was really disappointing to me. ABE Books. So I'm not going to be using them anymore. And it's disappointing, because that's where I was finding a lot of my Franklin Library editions that I've brought into my library. But there are other retailers that will have those books available for me that I can look out for. And the reason it's important to me not to do it that way is not that I don't want to support the individual sellers who are selling their product through ABE Books, but because I know that Amazon cheats those sellers out of a lot of the money that is supposed to go to them when you purchase through one of their sites. So knowing that they might be selling somewhere else will help me support them in a way that will actually get them a fair percentage of their profit. So that's one thing that I learned from this that I am going to be taking and doing, but I would definitely encourage you to please check this book out. Like I said, it's really short. The audio, which is read by Danny Kane himself, is barely 4 hours, if that. The book is really short. It is only 126 pages, and that includes all of the notes in the back. So please check it out. Get to know why you should support your local businesses, not just bookstores, just local businesses, and keep that money in your community, because that is something that is really important and vital for the future. So definitely check it out. The next book that I read in the month of January was Matrix by Lauren Groff, which was something that I got from the library. And I loved this book a lot. It's currently sitting in my favorite read of 2022 spot, but the year is very young, as you can imagine, so a lot can happen, and I have a heavy hitter coming in the month of February that could challenge it. But this is a great book. It takes the life of Marie de France, who is a poet, and very little is known about her, and imagines a life for her. And it imagines this really vibrant, interesting life that says a lot about the role of women in history and the ways in which the role of women has been diminished and even erased in history. And it does a lot of interesting things. Eleanor of Aquitaine is a character, if you are interested in history and any of that stuff. I just thought this book was really fascinating. It's about a girl boss lesbian nun, and if that doesn't lure you in, I don't know what will. It's a fantastic book. I really loved it. I had kind of had an inkling once I really found out what it was about that I was going to like it, but boy howdy, did I love it very much. The next book that I read in January was Young Mungo by Douglas Stuart. I was really looking forward to this. It was one of my most anticipated reads of 2022. I'll link that video in the description box down below. I'm a huge fan of Shuggie Bain. Shuggie Bain was one of my favorite reads in the year in which I read it. It was not my actual favorite, but it was very close. It just really spoke to me on a personal level, which is interesting because I did not grow up in Scotland in a working class family under Margaret Thatcher. And yet a lot of the story resonated with me and reminded me of my own childhood with an alcoholic mother. So I was really looking forward to Young Mungo. There are similarities between Young Mungo and Shuggie Bain. I won't go into spoilers here. I was a little bit disappointed in that there are two storylines, and I think one of those storylines could be fully edited out of the book, and it would be a better book. The one that I think you could edit out, there are a little too many shocking twists. And I think it's easy to see why Douglas Stewart or somebody would think that they needed those because it would really hammer in the emotion of the book. But I think you get all of those things without that storyline anyway. It's just not as salacious. And that's all I will say about that. I don't want to spoil it for anyone. I did enjoy it. It's not going to be my most disappointing read of 2022 and not anything like that. I did like it. I think it's a good book. I think people will enjoy it, especially if you did like Shuggie Bain. But I have that one reservation, and it will be interesting to see what Douglas Stewart does next. I kind of do hope that he gets away from tender-hearted young characters who love their alcoholic mother in his next book, but I think it's different enough from Shuggie Bain that it's still okay, but it will be interesting to see what he does next. The next book that I read in January was Agatha of Little Neon by Claire Luchette. So it was a big month for lesbian nuns. As I keep stealing a line from Kurt Anderson, who is a commenter, but it's perfect. I really enjoyed this book. This is also something I would compare to Zori by Laird Hunt because it seems like a series of small moments that really create a mosaic by the end that you can step back and look at, and it's just beautiful. A lot of people said that they were going to pick this book up when I talked about it in a Friday Reads video. I really hope more people pick it up and enjoy it as much as I did because I think it's fascinating. It follows a nun who is working with 3 other nuns in a daycare in Buffalo, New York. Their parish closes down their convent and reassigns them to a halfway house in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, where they will live with the people who are in the halfway house and tend to them and try to keep them out of trouble. And Agatha ends up working at the local high school as well, teaching geometry, even though she has to kind of learn the geometry in order to teach it. And now that she is kind of out on her own, she actually has time to think and reflect on the church and what it does to women and what it does to support men who it should not be supporting. And just the way she spends her time and what she wants out of life and the ways in which she has allowed the church and wanted the church to erase her own identity. And she kind of starts to question what she wants. It's a beautiful book. I would absolutely recommend it. And it is one of the reasons I really wanted to highlight a lot of the books that I read in January once again. The only other book that I finished in the month of January was the one that I would kind of classify as a dud, but I hate really describing it as that because it feels like punching down. It's a debut book. I think there's a world in which people would enjoy The Boy with a Bird in His Chest by Emme Lund. I didn't. I feel like there's that magical element in which it is about a boy who is born with a hole in his chest. His rib cage is exposed, and there is a bird that lives inside his rib cage. And it is alleged that there are other people like him out in the world, but his mother hides him away from the world in fear that the army of acronyms, that's what she calls them, which could be anyone from the FBI to the CIA to the DHS or CPS or anything like that. She's worried that they will take him and study him and that people will oppress him and be prejudiced against him if they find out his secret. It is sort of a metaphor for having a queer identity in this world, but I don't think it does anything clever with that idea. I feel like it just stays at surface level observations of what that is all like. And I thought that was a little disappointing. I think there's a world in which people will enjoy it. But for me, like I said, all of the observations felt really cliched. And I don't think it did anything really interesting with its idea. And it didn't feel like this idea of the magical realism aspect fit in with the sort of gritty real world sex positive vibe. Like they just felt like two different books a lot of the time to me. And it was one of my most anticipated reads of 2022. I'm not going to include it as like my most disappointing read, even though I tend to think that the most disappointing books tend to be things you were anticipating. So maybe I'll rethink that over time. But I ended up not liking it. But I think that there's definitely room for other people to enjoy it more than I did. So take that with a grain of salt, if you will. And I am going to be finishing Nobody's Magic by Destiny O. Birdsong. I'm halfway through and really enjoying it. It does definitely have vibes of my beloved The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. If you liked that book, you would probably like this. Or if you've been interested in The Secret Lives of Church Ladies, you might be interested in Nobody's Magic as well. It is almost, the first section follows one girl who is Black and has albinism in the Louisiana area. And then the second half in the middle follows a different girl who lives in the same area and also is Black and lives with albinism. And I believe there's a third toward the end, but I haven't gotten there yet. And they just have really interesting stories, and it's a great way of putting you in a world. You really feel invested in what they have going on very quickly, and I'm very eager to finish it. Now, I am going to have to try to finish Nobody's Magic fairly quickly because I need to dive into my next book, but I think this is going to be doable. I'm really looking forward to finishing it. It comes out on February 8th, and I should mention that The Boy with the Bird in His Chest is also released in February. Let me get the exact date for you. So The Boy with the Bird in His Chest is released February 15th. Nobody's Magic is released on February 8th. And I would definitely recommend Nobody's Magic, again, especially if you were a fan of my beloved The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. The other book I'm carrying into February with me is the audio that I have been listening to, The Love Songs of W.E.B. DuBois by Honorée, Fannone, Jeffers. I've been really enjoying this book. Once I got sick, I started losing progress with audio, and then I haven't really been able to focus on an audiobook. I did try to start again, I think later in the day on Friday, and I just wasn't able to really focus. So I'm hopefully going to get my ability to focus on audio back because I was really enjoying it, and it's a long book. It's 30 hours on audio, but I was really enjoying it, and I want to get back to it. So I will be doing that in February as well, which should be easy enough because I don't have anything lined up for audio. And because February is Black History Month, and I really wanted to do some reading in February that would align with that, The Love Songs of W.E.B. DuBois does fit in with the Black History Month vibe that I'm going for, so it will be perfect for that. The book that I am supposed to start on February 1st, which is the day that this video will be going live, is Beloved by Toni Morrison, which will also fit that vibe. This is going to be a buddy read with Amelia Reeds, who is a commenter, and I'm really looking forward to this. We buddy read Song of Solomon, I don't remember when, but it was my favorite read of that year. Was that 2020? I think it might have been. That, I think, was the book that beat Shuggie Bain for my favorite read of the year. And we had always said since then that we wanted to do Beloved together. So all this time later, here we are doing it, and I'm really looking forward to this. This was a 5-star prediction for my Pulitzer Prize for Fiction project. So I have very high anticipations for this book. Will it live up to them? I think it will. But we'll see. I'm trying not to hype myself up too much. I really want to have mellow expectations and not set myself up for failure as I pick up Beloved, because I've been loving Toni Morrison a lot, and I would like that to continue. So the ones of hers that I have read, Home was the first one I read, and it was the only one I read while she was still alive. After she died, I read The Bluest Eye. Then I read Song of Solomon with Amelia. Then I read Love with Britta Bowler, which is, Home was fine, Love was fine, loved The Bluest Eye, loved the Song of Solomon, and I'm really looking forward to this. So again, if you have recommendations about what to do after Beloved, I know there are people out there who are Sula fans. Let me know what you think I should do next in the comment section down below. But this is something that I will be starting February 1st. So I'm going to have to balance this with finishing Nobody's Magic by Destiny O. Birdsong. And then we're going to go chapter by chapter and check in with each other. And that's the plan. And so hopefully by the end of the month, we should be done. We didn't put a timeline on it. We're just going to go chapter by chapter. Amelia has a lot going on, and then life has been crazy. So we're just going to not put any pressure or sense of timeline or urgency on it. But that is what I will be doing. It's my big project. The other thing I have lined up for February is that I'm going to participate in the LGBTQ in Translation read along. The book that was selected for that is The Membranes by Ta-Wei, translated by Larissa Heinrich. I'll put the information for the read along in the description box down below. Check out Jen's video where she announced it. If you'd like to participate, I would encourage you to do so. We have a fun group going on Discord already. So this is something I'm gonna have to balance. I think I'm gonna break my rule. I have been for about a year now only wanting to read one physical book and one audiobook at a time. So I'm kind of gonna break that. Obviously, I'm gonna be starting Beloved tomorrow, which is February 1st, the day this is published. And then I'm gonna have to balance that with Nobody's Magic. Nobody's Magic should go very quickly. Once I'm done with Nobody's Magic, I'm going to be picking up the Membranes and participating in the read-along. And it's a short book, so I should be able to catch up no problem and hopefully finish it quickly so I can really just focus on Beloved. And then once that's done, I don't think this is gonna happen until March, but the other book that was in the running for the February-March LGBTQ in translation read-along is To the Friend Who Did Not Save My Life by Hervé Guibert, translated by Linda Coverdale. I'm probably gonna do this in March, but if there's room in February, I'll fit it in. But I think what's more likely to happen is that I'm gonna finish Love Songs of W.E.B. DuBois, The Membranes, and Beloved. And if I have time left over, I'll probably look for something that's gonna fit in with the Black History Month theme or vibe, if you will, whichever way you wanna go. And then just save To the Friend Who Did Not Save My Life for March and not stress myself out. If I finish the Love Songs of W.E.B. DuBois with a fair amount of time, I do have an audiobook on NetGalley, A Dream of a Woman, which is a collection of short stories that I will probably try to fit in, but I was thinking Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby is something that would also kind of naturally fit in with the Black History Month vibe. It is not a historical book, but it is by a Black author, so that would certainly fit in. So I'd like to get to that if possible as well. And I'm gonna leave my TBR at Love Songs of W.E.B. DuBois and these for now. And I don't want to overwhelm myself with possibilities and options, but these are the things that I would really like to fit in. And again, one of them could easily slide to March if I feel like I want to accomplish more. I would love to hear about how your January was in terms of reading or just generally anything else. Like I said, reading was great. Everything else was kind of a mess. So let me know how your January was in the comment section down below. Let me know what you have planned for February. If you're going to be doing reads for Black History Month, let me know what you've chosen in the description box down below. If you haven't read this, my beloved The Secret Lives of Church Ladies, I would recommend that. If you haven't read Overground Railroad by Candace Taylor, I would also recommend that. So let me know what you're planning to do, and if you're going to be participating in any other readathon or reading event, let me know in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.